Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 24 male, fresh out of college, had met with my grandparents and I told them that they were strangers to me and my sister and cannot just waltz their way into our lives. My mom died a few years after my sister was born, and my dad became our sole parent. He took care of my sister and me as a single father, but he died in my second year of college. He was killed by a drunk driver in the wrong lane. It was traumatizing for us because we were in the car with him, and although we survived with minor injuries, life without our dad is not the same. We struggled a lot at first, battling with trauma and the uncertainty of our future. I had to combine working odd jobs and learning so I could provide for my sister. I got custody as a sole guardian. The law had initially tried to connect with my grandparents, our only surviving relatives, but they said they were not capable of taking us in. I barely know them, since Dad has severed ties with them when I was younger because they did not like my mum, so I did not feel so bad about the rejection. I was a bit glad since I couldn't trust my sister with them. So a few days ago, a fairly familiar old lady showed up at my doorstep. Not only was it unannounced, but she rang the bell non-stop like she was in trouble. She introduced herself as my Nana, my father's mother, and since I vaguely remember her, I let her in. I made small talk to get her to explain her unexpected visit, but she was upset that I kept her waiting at the door for a while, so she didn't talk much. I entertained her as best as I could and was really glad when she finally said she gotta go. When she got to the door, she said she would come back in 2 days with my grandpa and would like me to be available. Not wanting to be rude, I told her they could come by. It was an awkward meeting for sure. I answered their questions about our lives, even though they felt intrusive. Then my Nana started to get all touchy and emotional, telling me she missed us, asking about my sister, and why she wasn't at home for their visit. I wasn't having it. I told her that I barely know her and that I do not appreciate being touched by strangers. She kept talking about wanting to bond more with us, that it was not right that we lived like we had no relatives. She even claimed that by law they were our legal guardians and she had to do her duties towards us. I told her it was not needed since I'm an adult, and I am my sister's guardian. If they were not in our lives when my parents were alive and when we were involved in that accident, then they lost the right to be in our present lives. She flared up immediately, saying I was ungrateful, haughty, and full of myself. She said some hurtful words and ended it with how she's only here for my sister, and I was in no position to be her guardian. My grandfather sneered and asked if I thought I was the man of the moment. They threatened to call CPS on me if I tried keeping them away from their granddaughter, and they had plans to take her away. I angrily asked them to leave and never come back because I didn't want anything to do with them and that they were strangers to us. It was an awful experience and I have been feeling demoralized about the whole thing. Should I let them into our lives? They abandoned us when we needed help and my sister doesn't even know them. Am I the a-hole for telling them off and insisting that they are strangers? Update. Thanks for your advice. I really appreciate them all. I reached out to a lawyer and explained my situation. He has assured me that they do not have the right to take away my sister. He promised to look into the matter and I expect to hear from him soon. I still haven't told my sister about it. It may seem a little selfish, but I don't want her to get curious or decide to see them. I do not trust these people yet. I get a mini panic attack when the phone rings because I fear that they would make good their threat and call CPS on us. Final update. So my grandparents were convinced by a con man who posed as a lawyer that he could help them get the little inheritance my parents willed to me and my sister. I guess he brainwashed them quite well and may have been the one to plant the idea of calling CPS. We were able to find out about this after my lawyer had set up a civil discussion between us. As it turned out, my dad had left something sizable for my sister and me, which I had almost forgotten about, but the major focus was on my sister. Mom's family has a tradition of giving certain property to the daughters in the family, and my mom had passed hers to my sister before her death. Since my sister is underage, she's 13, my nana felt she could be easily manipulated to give up the property so they could sell it. This is why they specifically wanted her. I was just an obstacle in their way. I am appalled by their actions. To them, we were a means to an end, and their actions prove that they do not regard us as their flesh and blood. Although my nana apologized for their rash actions and the harsh words they used, I don't think I would forgive them soon. I've set the motion for a restraining order against them, and I'm planning on relocating soon. P.S. I told my sister about the whole visit and told her she's free to interact with them if she wants to. She does not. She doesn't know them, and with the behavior they exhibited, she's not sure she can trust them after what they said and did. So this is it. I'm glad I pulled through. Thanks to everyone who gave me the right advice. You're the best. Thank you. You're not the a-hole, OP. Even without the update, your grandparents weren't there for you when you and your sister needed them the most. You and your sister lost your parents. They were the only relatives you two had left, but they chose not to be there for you guys. They lost the right to be your grandparents when they did that. To make matters worse, it turns out they only decided to come into your life so they could manipulate your sister and have her give them her inheritance. They're both horrible people, and I wouldn't blame you if you can't forgive them in this lifetime. Story 2. My sister-in-law is pregnant. We just had a baby. We had been batting names back and forth and hadn't found one that felt quite right. Sister-in-law announced to us that she and my brother were pregnant and were naming the baby Marshall if it was a boy. We were just about 5 months old when she found out she was pregnant. Part of the reason they chose that name is Marshall is my mother's maiden name. When she said it, I said, "Oh, what a great thought. That should totally be on my list." And she kind of just laughed it off. In hindsight, apparently she did not realize I was serious. We didn't want to decide on a name until we met the baby, and we didn't know the gender until the birth. We had a top 3 list for boy or girl and figured once we met the baby we would know. So our son was born, and Marshall felt like a great fit. By that time, we had finally chosen his middle name, which also really fit well with Marshall. On the way home, I remarked to my husband, he and his cousin will be identical twins. But I didn't think anything of it beyond that. Names aren't a huge deal to me in terms of individuality. Obviously, I wanted to like my son's name, but I wasn't like, maybe I shouldn't name him Marshall because Eminem is already using it, or anything. So we sent the birth announcement to the family, and my sister-in-law went ballistic. She feels we stole the name from her and should have picked a different name since we knew she intended to use it, and that her baby and her pregnancy have lost some semblance of individuality. I don't get this, but I also am not really into mom culture the way she is. So I could be missing something. Was I an a-hole? You're the a-hole, OP. Usually, I'm all for the whole, you can't call dibs on a baby name. But what makes this situation different, as has been pointed out, is that your sister-in-law told you the name that she was using 100%. And you immediately told her to face, "It's going on my list," and then you named your baby that. It's not like it's a name your sister-in-law was thinking of using. She was actually naming the baby that. And she's right. Now, your baby will be the first Marshall. And now her special announcement is going to be less special because the immediate thought is likely to be another baby Marshall. She didn't tell you the name to give you baby name ideas. She told you the name because she wanted to share her special moment. And you absolutely crapped all over it. Now for some comments. You are the a-hole. I forced myself to read through this to see if you redeemed yourself in any way. You did not. That was a name they had picked out, yet you decided to use it. Did you really think they would be okay continuing forward giving their child the name as yours? You are self-centered and have no thoughts of anyone but yourself. You're the a-hole. This is one of those things that's common courtesy. Don't name your kid the same name as a relative's kid, because it's too complicated and one of them is going to have to go by a nickname. If your brother and sister-in-law don't change their plans, they look petty and unreasonable. And you're the one that put them in that position. I've always thought that people who kept names secret were paranoid, but I guess not. You're the a-hole. She told you she was planning on using that name and you flat out stole it. And to just spring it on them like that, that's cold. Do you hate them or something? Like, are they awful? This isn't a distant relation. I could understand how she would feel she couldn't use it now. These children would be cousins of a similar age. It would likely cause a lot of confusion. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law have 2 boys with names that both begin with J. My husband and I wanted to name our son a name that was kinda similar to one of the boys' names, which also begins with J. We asked them how they felt about it long before I gave birth, and it wasn't even the same name. Story 3. So me and my boyfriend of 3 years have gone through phases of being really close and then drifting apart. I've just got back from a 2-week holiday with my family, and as a result, inevitably, we haven't been as close. We had a petty argument that turned huge, ended up with talking about how he thinks we're drifting. We are very adult about things and we look to fix things rather than go crazy and blow things out of proportion. So I asked him why. He said he isn't attracted to me anymore and he prefers skinnier girls. Now, I'm a very average-sized 19-year-old. Yes, I have put on weight over the past few years. Being a broke student doesn't help. But I am by no means overweight. UK size 10 for context. No one has ever told me that I'm not skinny enough for them. He then proceeded to cry about how horrible he felt for saying that. Despite feeling 100% crushed that the man I love more than anything has told me that I'm too big for him and I'm not attractive enough, I level-headedly told him that I can't be with someone who doesn't find me attractive, which is fair enough, right? I mean, how can I ever take my clothes off around him or let him touch me without thinking, wow, he must be so disgusted by me. So he left in a bit of a state, crying so much. He begs me to meet up with him the next day, which I do. And I lay down the facts. Why would he want to be with someone he doesn't actually find beautiful? It's hard, man, because I want to comply and take him back. I'm not sure whether I can look past this. I would like to know if anyone has been in a place where you can still love and be loved by a person who finds you physically unattractive. Can this be fixed and how? Is there anything I can do to improve our relationship now, or is it a matter of totally detaching myself and never looking back? I really bloody love him, so this is the last resort, albeit an option I'm willing to take. OP, do not take him back. You are right to go with your instinct that this relationship is now dead. You will always wonder if he finds you attractive or just doesn't want to deal with the headache of leaving you and having to start over with someone else. You will always feel ashamed by him, and you will always resent him for it. He's tainted your foundation of trust forever. Now for some comments. Hell no, you shouldn't. Not unless you like being made to feel like an unattractive piece of shit anytime he gets upset. He doesn't get to not accept a breakup. You aren't his to possess. If you want to break up, then you are broken up and he can go cry and kick rocks. He doesn't actually think that and just said it to rile you up and make you insecure. So you can shut up about whatever it was you were arguing about in the first place. Maybe you would even be so ashamed you wouldn't bring up any issues ever. You called his bluff and now he's backtracking. You can do better. Throw this fish back. Honey, you go find yourself a man who wants to bang the bones off of you 24/7. He said it out of anger, I'm sure, which is messed up. Especially since you've been together for a while and you guys don't tend to argue. I think it was very immature, and personally, I can't imagine seeing my significant other or our relationship the same way if they dropped a bomb like that on me. You deserve and have the right to be with someone who finds you attractive. And likewise, you shouldn't feel forced to stay with someone if you lost attraction to them. It's just not fair for either person, and it's hurtful. It's too bad that it happened, and it's nice that he's clearly devastated over what he said to you. But there is no taking it back, and that is a tough one to work through.